Hello and welcome. You are watching my video about Mage Specs. I call this my Invincible Mage Spec, which of course is not entirely accurate since nothing's invincible, but it's pretty darn close. Now, mages are known for their squishiness, and so if you're struggling to get your mage leveled, you really won't go wrong with this spec. Now, this spec is not the spec that will take you to level 50 faster than any other spec. What this spec is extraordinarily survivable. In fact, it's really one of the most survivable specs across any class in the entire game. So if you are concerned about leveling your mage because they are, so weak and helpless when taking damage, then this should be a spec that you'll want to look into as you level your character. Okay, so this is primarily an elementalist spec, so I'll have a pet to tank for me. But the first soul that I take is Chloromancer. With that, I get the ability Radiant Spores, a debuff on my target, which will allow my pet some minor self-healing when he attacks. I also have Vile Spores, which is a rather weak attack, but it will get me through the first couple of levels. And the first 2 points go into Accelerated Growth. Now, this is a low damage spec, like I mentioned, so anything that can directly enhance damage is a good thing. And this will also give me Withering Vine at level 2, which is a damage over time spell that will also give healing over time to my pet. At level 3, I take the Warlock Soul, and this gives me Life Leech, which is a damage over time ability that also heals me for some of the damage. And I also get Void Bolt, which is a much more powerful attack than Vile Spores. Now with my points, I continue with Accelerated Growth, and I put my extra point into Improved Life Leech, which increases both damage and healing of that ability. At level 4, I continue with Accelerated Growth, and now I also get Entropic Veil, a situational spell that increases my damage by 10% while using my charge. At level 5, I finish Accelerated Growth, and I'll also take my third soul, which will finally be Elementalist. Now this gives me my Lesser Earth Elemental, which makes for a very nice tank, and also gives me Crystalline Missiles, an attack that currently is pretty much the exact same spell as Void Bolt. At level 6, my first point goes to Bloom. Now this is my first and primary healing spell all the way through level 50. Bloom can be used on myself or any team member, which also includes my pet. My second point goes into Improved Life Leech, which opens up Dark Touch, which is another damage over time ability. At level 7 and 8, I take Healing Slipstream, which reduces my Bloom cast time. It actually changes it to an instant cast, and later on it'll also affect my Flourish when I get that. Level 8 also opens up Stream of Reclamation ability, which is very powerful channeled attack. At level 9, my extra point goes to Improved Life Leech, and my normal levels 9 and 10 points are both going to Empowered Veil, which gives massive buffs to my Veils. At level 10, I get my primary Veil, Lifegiving Veil, a 1-hour buff, which gives me and my pet self-healing as I do damage with my life spells. Now, the life spell specification on this Veil is important to keep in mind, since it suddenly makes Vile Spores rather important compared to what it was before. At level 11, I take Synthesis, which is a 1-hour buff designed for tanks, but it's usable on my pet. And it will increase the healing my pet receives from Lifegiving Veil by 150%. It lasts for an hour, and this is a large part of why I call this spec the Invincible Mage Spec. At level 12, I finish off Empowered Veil, and this opens up the new ability Natural Conversion, which turns the next damaging spell from the target into a spell that heals his target, which usually means that it will heal either myself or my pet. I also get Nature's Cleansing, which removes diseases, poisons, and curses, and I put my bonus point into Magical Affinity, which increases charge generation. Now, I need 3 more points at this point in Chloromancer, and none of my options are terribly good, but I'll go with Phytogenesis, which will increase the healing chances of Radiant Spores, and it changes it from a single target debuff to an AoE group debuff. And at level 14, I gain Ruin, a nice instant attack that also heals through my Lifegiving Veil, and I put my bonus level 15 point into Magical Affinity. Level 16, I take Nature's Touch, which rounds out the healing goodness of this spec, and this is one of my more powerful attacks, and as long as I have Lifegiving Veil and my pet has Synthesis, this attack heals my pet for 100% of the damage done by Nature's Touch. And at level 16, I also open up Flourish, which is my group heal. Okay, now at level 17, I put a 3rd point in Magical Affinity, and this opens up the ability Sacrifice Life Mana. This sacrifices 15% of my maximum health and adds 15% of my max mana, and it can be used in combat. So between this and Bloom, I can basically fight forever. Me and my pet, we're never going to run out of health, and I'm never going to run out of mana as long as my pet maintains all of the aggro. And as long as I don't have him fighting mobs that DPS faster than I'm capable of healing him, I can just go and go and go and go. So now at this point, I am done with both the Chloromancer and Warlock tree, and I've taken the most important points of this spec except for one. So currently, if I'm fighting against a single NPC, even one a couple levels higher than myself, or some elites sometimes, I can keep my pet at 100% health while I damage away with Nature's Touch, Ruin, and Vile Spores. Fighting against multiple opponents can be a little bit trickier, but it's still relatively easy because of the healing spells that I have available. I should be able to take on 3 or 4 mobs without any problem as long as I'm paying attention to the fight. Now, every point of the next 16 levels must be used in the Elementalist tree. I can assign them pretty much where I want them, so right now I'll just cover the things that you need to know about the Elementalist tree. First off, Ice Shield. It's important because it absorbs a lot of damage, and it's essentially as powerful a defensive spell as Bloom. Now, the description doesn't say this, so I'm not sure if this is intentional or if it will be removed, but currently Ice Shield saves me from all kickback on casts and channels while active, which is huge when dealing with large groups or added NPCs during a fight. Now, my 12-point ability here is Summon Lesser Air Elemental, but I never had any success with using this in place of the Earth Elemental. Earth Elemental is a much better tank. My 14-point ability is Burning Ground. Now, this is not only my most powerful spell, but it's actually one of the more powerful spells among all Mage Souls, so I use this in every fight. There's just never a reason not to use Burning Ground. My 16-point ability is Quicken Elements. This is an extremely powerful channeled heal for my pet, so when things are going very badly, I can actually just sit back and use this non-stop on my elemental while he slowly takes out the mobs. As long as he holds all the aggro off me, now Quicken Elements will draw aggro, but as long as my pet can keep all of the aggro, I can literally just keep him healed all day long. I also take 2 points in Improve Quicken Elements. Now at level 33, I have to take Greater Elemental Affinity. Zam.com actually has the description wrong, and this is the talent that allows me to cast Greater Elementals. Now, my Lesser Elementals only go up to level 30. Okay, so by the time 33 rolls around, they're pretty useless. So it's extremely important if you're doing this spec that you get this talent by level 33, and the way that I've designed this spec will allow you to do that. And that is the nuts and bolts of the Invincible Mage Spec. Now I now have 17 more levels to get through and 23 more points to spend, and I can put them wherever I want depending on how I want to play it. There are a lot of talents that will make my elementals stronger and more durable, but they are really not as important to me as they would be to an elementalist who doesn't also have this Chloromancer build. Now, I know that my level 34 talent is going to go into Fiery Assault. This is an awesome channeled and multi-target DPS ability, but other than that, I can really play around with whatever I want. I can focus on my pet's power and survival in the Elementalist tree, I can focus on my healing in the Chloro tree, or I can start focusing on my Warlock, which will give me added DPS and some nice buffs and debuffs. And that's it for the Invincible Mage Spec. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.